thought this was going to be an easy case. I was totally wrong. She was thrown in a trash can, left for dead, naked, like a piece of trash.
He was a very violent sexual predator. He targeted victims that he knew would not be credible.
He had sexual assaults dating back to 1983, yet no one ever filed a case on him.
It was a matter of time before he brutally attacks another female victim and kills her.
DNA and CODIS played a very important role in this case.
Suddenly we had physical evidence that placed someone there.
We didn't want this to be another case that he gets away with.
I have what I call big brother syndrome. It's like you're picking on someone that can't defend themselves. And that's just, to me, not right. And maybe that's one of the reasons I went into law enforcement. I started with Santa Ana Police Department like in 82. I wanted to be a detective like anybody in their career. And I was asked to do sex crimes. So that's how my career got started. I worked sex crimes for about 12 years. This case is one of the most interesting cases I've ever worked. I'd like to call it my career case.
I was supervising the sexual assault unit. During that era, we were probably experiencing well over 100 sexual assaults a month. At that time, there was a problem with what we call circuit girls that travel across the country for prostitution. Unfortunately, it appears to be a high level of crime where these prostitutes are victimized, and a lot of crimes aren't reported because they have fear that they'll be arrested because of what they're doing, or they're not reported because they feel ashamed, or they feel that law enforcement won't believe them.
My experience is 30% of the people don't believe a prostitute can be raped. They act like it's just a business deal gone bad. My first contact in this case was basically a police report that arrives on my desk. My sergeant assigns a case. I start reading it. I saw the photographs. She was thrown in a trash can, left for dead, naked, like a piece of trash. And that caught my attention. That's not a normal business deal go bad. I believe a local preacher was walking by that night and heard her crying, helps her out of the trash dumpster. Police are called, and then an investigation started from there. She's taken to the hospital, and they do a sexual assault kit on her, where they'll swab her body. They're going to take a DNA test. Any semen that's found, hairs that are left behind, any biological evidence we can find is done at the hospital off of her.
In forensic science, we work off of something they call the CARDS principle, or the principle of exchange. And that means that when people come into contact with each other, there's very likely some exchange of some fiber, a hair, or body fluid. And our job as forensic scientists is to make sure we collect any of those fibers or hairs or fluids that have been exchanged, because we're trying to place people at a scene, or we're trying to place people together, or we're trying to exclude people from being at the scene or being together.
I got this case about a week after it occurred. I call a victim. We'll call her Jane. She comes in, and we sit down and we have a talk. I've read the original police report, but I want to hear what happened to her. Her words. She told me that she was walking the street and she started to make some money. A gentleman in a black Cadillac drove up. He seemed like a routine John. And And she says, you want to do something in the car? And he says, yeah. She gets in the car. They start negotiating price and acts that she'll perform on him. She likes to go to a hotel. So as they're driving down the road, she's saying there's a hotel over here, a hotel over there, and he starts going an opposite direction. They pull into a parking lot, and it's an industrial area, dark, blacked out. And he says, we're gonna do these certain acts. And she says, no, I don't do them. He goes, well, I'll give you more money. And she just says, no, I just don't do them. We're done here, like.
$500.
Money. I'm getting out of here. Let me out of this car. Why is this locked?
And he grabs her by the throat, crushes her. He's choking her so hard she can't even talk. She passes out. The next thing she knows, she's in the back seat. He's on top of her, and she's like, I can't do this. And he goes, you will. And he forces this on her, takes off her clothes, and he's performing every sexual act you can imagine on her against her will.
For some people, rape is an act of power. Most of the research on it, which is a little counterintuitive to people who think it's about sexual gratification, supports the view that the primary issue on the mind of the rapist is one about asserting control over their victim, and that's what gives them gratification more than the sexual act itself.
She told me when it was over, he says, if you would have just done what I asked, we wouldn't be in this situation here. And he goes, but now I can't let you go. So he starts choking her, choking her, choking her. She can't breathe. Her head's about to explode, and that's the last thing she remembers.
In the mind of the suspect, he honestly thought he killed her. So it was basically working a homicide case, if you will, but this victim actually came to and survived.
She described him as about 6 foot tall. What she remembered that really helped his case was a black Cadillac. She described it perfectly, that it was immaculate. It was so clean. She gave us a plate number with 4 numbers at the end of the plate, 8177. She memorized those numbers before she got into the car. So, I mean, she did everything you could really ask for of a victim. I start the investigation. We put the word on the street with the prostitute, say, hey, we're looking for this guy in a black Cadillac. He's raping you girls. Give us a phone call. Also, I do a flyer of a black Cadillac. We were stopping every black Cadillac on Harbor Boulevard, sending out statewide bolos. So I thought this was going to be an easy case. Just got to find me a black Cadillac with those numbers, and we'll go from there. We knew we had DNA evidence, so I thought this was going to be an easy case. I was totally wrong. Santa Ana, it's 2 different cities. During the day, it's a city hub. During the night, it's a high gang populated area, and certain areas are known for its prostitution.
In dealing with sexual assault cases involving the prostitution community, the solvability rate was minimal. A lot of these victims travel. It would be challenging to even locate them, to do any follow-up investigative work. If you solved, 1 or 2 out of 100 cases, you were doing great. There's only 2 sexual assault detectives working all the sexual assaults in the city of Santa Ana, so you can imagine the caseload for these detectives was pretty significant.
Jane was a veteran prostitute. I believe she started at 16. She normally works in Las Vegas, where she makes $500 an hour, and she came out to see the circuit. She knew the risk of the business, but she was basically telling me she'd been raped and left for dead, and she wanted something done. In her opinion, he had done this before. A description is put out of the vehicle, which was a shiny black Cadillac, with the last 4 numbers possibly being 8177. We databased everything we could find and could not come up with a Cadillac with those last 4 numbers. And then one morning they come in and they said, patrol officer arrested your suspect. I couldn't be happier, right? I started reading the report, and what happened was Patrol is working Harbor Boulevard very hard. We were having a couple rapes in that area, Jane's and several others. They pull up on a car, it's a Cadillac, but in that Cadillac, the driver is having sex with a transvestite. Both of them are arrested for lewd conduct in public, which is a crime in Santa Ana. The driver matches the description of another rape case, not Jane's, a prostitute rape, and she's actually working that night, so they bring her over. And she says, yes, the driver of that Cadillac is the guy that raped me. Another officer steps in and goes, hey, I worked a case 4 months ago, Jane's case, and this guy kind of matches the description. They call up Jane, and Jane comes to the station and IDs the same guy. And so they arrested him for Jane's case. During that arrest, the guy submitted to a DNA test, but would not talk under Miranda.
The crime that perhaps DNA has had the most impact on is sexual assaults and helping us solve rapes. When I was younger, in the 1970s, victims often had to testify and identify the suspect in court. With the advent of DNA, suddenly we brought to those victims a really powerful tool that actually linked an individual to that sexual assault. Suddenly we had physical evidence that placed someone there.
They submit the case to the district attorney's office, and the district attorney decides to file. We have his DNA, but we have yet to have it tested and come back yet. It takes time. So I decided to go see the car, because if this thing's immaculate, then I'm like, really, we got the guy. I mean, we're really moving here. As soon as I saw the car sitting there, it gave me a bad vibe. It was trashed. And when I opened the car door, the passenger side, there was food wrappers, weeks old, all over the floor, all over the back seat. Gave me a bad vibe. However, we have positive IDs by 2 victims. We go to court. The female victim from the first rape is there, and Jane is there in court. And they're going to testify as to what happened to them. For a victim to go on the stand as a victim of rape, it's humiliating. I mean, it is the toughest thing probably besides the actual event they're ever going to do in their life. So Jane gets on the stand. Then the defense attorney starts hammering her, going over what happened in the car. Jane says, well, he put his left hand on my throat and started choking me. And he would say, like, well, yeah, a second ago you said it was his right hand. And a few minutes later, he's hammering her again about, you're making $25,000 a month, you're this, you're nothing but a prostitute. She stands up, screams, I can't take this anymore, runs right down the courtroom, right past me, out the doors of the courtroom, down the hall, and I guess she's leaving the court building. I'm on my feet, chasing her as fast as I can. She's crying, very emotional. She goes, I'm not going to testify. And I go, no. If this is the guy that did it, we can't let this happen to anybody else. I mean, you're like a hero in this case. So she goes back into the courtroom. Jane tells the rest of her story. A judge says, yes, there's enough probable cause to hold him over for a trial. 3 days later, the DNA comes back from him, and it's not our suspect. Those charges are immediately dropped.
I'm often asked why victims of crimes don't correctly remember what's happened to them if a person has been sexually assaulted. The short answer is the very hormones that help us fight or run away or to defend ourselves under an attack are hormones that are highly damaging to parts of our brain that are involved in forming memory.
Let me out of this. Why is this locked? Let me out. No.
So the majority of people under extraordinary stress do not have an accurate memory of what's happened to them.
After I told Jane that this is not the guy, she leaves town. And I have no idea where she went. We've submitted all the evidence that we can to the lab. The DNA's in the system. We're getting no hits. This case now is going cold.
DNA analysis was a huge boon to forensic biology. However, it had certain problems that still existed prior, and that is, if you didn't have a suspect, it didn't solve the case.
In the first days of DNA testing, if we had a profile and the detectives did not have a suspect, we couldn't do anything with that profile. We couldn't compare it to anything else. Perhaps we could compare it to other cases if they were within our laboratory, but if a case was happening in another state or another city, we wouldn't know about it necessarily. So that is one of the reasons why the CODIS system, or the Combined DNA Index System, came about. It involved legislation from every state in America to build this CODIS system.
CODIS, as a database of information, keeps all of these DNA profiles, and it compares them constantly against each other. If one crime were committed in one state and another crime were committed in another state, CODIS can link those two cases just simply by identifying a common DNA profile that was in both cases. It doesn't have to be by geography. It could also be by time. If two crimes were committed in the same area, but separated by days, weeks, months, or even years, CODIS can still identify that common DNA profile between those two cases.
5 years goes by. I receive a phone call from CODIS, and basically CODIS told me the DNA in Jane's case matches the DNA in a case in Washington. You want more information, contact Washington. And he gives me a phone number. When CODIS gave me the information, I don't even know what file they're talking about. It's just a bunch of numbers. I pulled the case and realized, oh, yeah, it's been 5 years. Yeah, I remember this case. Yeah, and I didn't solve it, which I take personal.
Tom was the type of detective that once he, had a lead, he would follow up on it and follow up. He would leave no stone unturned. And I knew if I assigned it to Tom, it would get done to the best of his ability. He, wholeheartedly agreed, yes, assign the case to me, I'll take it.
So I call the state of Washington, and I get the hold of the detective, and I said, hey, I just got a call from CODIS. He goes, I don't know what case you're talking about. I've never received a call. I go, well, let me tell you what happened in my case. This girl, Jane, was choked to death practically, sodomized, raped, and left for dead. He thinks about it for a couple minutes and says, that sounds like a case I just worked about 6 months ago. And I go, what? And he gives me a description of a girl who was in a bar with some of her girlfriends, and she needed a ride home, and she didn't have her phone. One of her girlfriends told her, a friend of mine, Lee, will give you a ride home if you want. He's given me one. You can catch a ride with us. She gets a ride home with this guy. He accidentally drives past her address, dumps off her friend. And then he continues opposite direction of her house. And she even says, hey, I live back that way. And he says, no, I got to make a phone call. Can't find reception. Maybe if we drive further into the woods, we'll get better reception. He stops the car, and the victim says, before she even knows what happened, he is on top of her, choking her, drags her out of the car, says, you're going to do what I say, throws her in the back, rapes, sodomizes her, chokes her. And then when he's done, he takes her home. He tells her, hey, I'm a very important person at this airline manufacturer where I work. And if you go to the police and tell them, it's going to be your word against mine, and they're not going to believe you because you drink. She still goes and files a police report. They take the victim to the hospital, and a rape examination is performed on her, and that's where Washington received their DNA sample. She made an accusation of a name, and his name was Lee Chandler. They bring in Lee Chandler to the police station to be interviewed. Once at the police station, the detective in Port Angeles reads him his rights,
And he immediately says, well, what do you have on me? As soon as he's told you're here under a rape investigation, he says, I'm not talking without my lawyer, and I'm heading back basically to California tomorrow. A case is submitted to the district attorney over there. The district attorney over in Washington felt there wasn't enough evidence yet to charge Lee Chandler with a crime. But right then and there, I knew I'm on this. I mean, it's like, okay, now it's legwork. I'm gonna find out whether Lee Chandler was my suspect or not. When I'm talking to the detective in Washington, he says, Lee Chandler works for a major airline manufacturer, and we think he's possibly like a vice president. And then he says, Lee Chandler lives by you. And I'm like, well, California's big. Whereabouts? He says, in the city of Westminster. And I'm like, that's really close. I would say if I lived in Westminster and wanted to pick up a hooker, I'd drive to Santa Ana Harbor Boulevard. That's how close he lived. I mean, it was like right next door. I get the police reports, and I also get the driver's license number of Lee Chandler. I start running records on him. He had sexual assaults dating back as far as I could find, 1983. Yet no one ever filed a case on him. To me, he was a predator, from what I was reading, and very controlling. You know, he was a brutal rapist. Every victim, every report that I found, violence.
He targeted victims that he knew would not be credible, victims that he knew that maybe the police wouldn't believe. For example, prostitutes, victims that might have been under the influence. So very calculating person and very deviant, and those people are dangerous. At this point, we still don't know if we have the right person. But even if we have the right person, how do we prove that he owned a black Cadillac? So many years have gone by, and what are the odds of him driving the same car? So we coordinated a surveillance team, get out to the location where he lives, and we're out early in the morning watching the home.
And we're sitting there, and we're watching, and we're watching. About a half hour later, a gentleman comes out to pick up a newspaper in the driveway. He picks up the newspaper, and he looks left and right and surveys the street. We're hiding now in the car, just barely peeking over the dash. We don't even know if that's Lee Chandler. It looks like the guy on the driver's license, but we're too far away. About a half hour later, garage door powers open, and to my surprise and joy, a black Cadillac backs out. My partner is pushing my head down going, you don't want to be seen, you don't want to be seen. And I'm like, that's him. I'd pop back up. He pushed me back down, that's him. He took off for work. I'm going, get the plate, get the plate, get the plate. It's a personal California plate, Jet Biz. Okay, Jetbizz. But as you're watching the car drive down the road, the license frame bounces, and you can see where Jane made her mistake. The 8 is a B. The I is a 1. The Z, when the plate goes up, it covers the Z and it looks like a 7. 8177. And it was like, wow. I mean, right there, it was wow. I'm like, oh, he's high up in this airline company, and he really thinks a lot of himself, and he got a personal plate that says Jet Biz, Jet Business, I'm Jet Biz. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Ever since that moment, this case was called Jet Biz.
Whenever it's a rape type case, it ends up being the victim's testimony against the suspect's testimony. So these cases are very, very difficult to prove. If someone's of a particular stature, like Lee being in the aerospace industry and being in a high position, with a little bit of clout, money, attorney, or what have you, there was a history there where he had gotten away with this. So we wanted to proceed very, very carefully.
I didn't want to tip him off, but I need to prove this biological evidence from Jane is him. So we wanted to get a sample of his DNA.
There are 3 main ways that we collect DNA. You can ask a person to volunteer to give a sample. That would be a tip-off, of course, that this person was under investigation. You can get a court order, get a warrant to collect a person's known DNA profile. The third way would be to surreptitiously collect a sample. Investigators can follow the individual around and wait for them to discard something.
We want to be able to get as much evidence as possible before we make that initial contact with a suspect. So we know he's a habitual smoker. We know that, from a discarded cigarette, you can get very valuable DNA from.
At the time in California, you were allowed to do this. We put a vehicle tracker on his car so that we would be able to follow him. Every time his car moved, we followed it. He, for like 5 straight days, went to work and straight home. I believe it was on a Saturday. I was not at work. My team that was following him. He took off for work, and as he's driving to work, he throws a cigarette butt out the window on the freeway. And the team shut down the entire freeway. We stopped the freeway to pick up that cigarette butt, put it into a paper bag, and bring it back to the station and have it tested. That's when I use my DNA friends, forensics, to say, this one I need fast. As I'm waiting for the DNA to come back, I gotta find my victim. Because you've heard the saying, no victim, no crime. And it's been 5 years. The phone number that I had does not work. And you would think, with all the police databases and all that we have, it wouldn't be hard. Could not find her. Anything I ran, I could not find her. I start calling all these people. I get a hold of a lady, and I just had a feeling that she knew her. And I'm like, look, at the time I didn't know it was her mom. I said, if you do know her, mention my name and tell her she was a victim of a crime, and I'd like to talk to her. Within 5 minutes, the phone rang, and it was her. First I go, do you remember the case where you were a victim of a sexual assault? She goes, I will never forget it. Now, this is a girl who's been involved in the sex trade her entire life, and she tells me she'll never forget this incident. And I go, well, I'm thinking that we're about to make an arrest on the case. I can't tell you who. However, this is going to be based on biological evidence versus eyewitness evidence, but you're going to need to come to court and everything. And she goes, well, I have a warrant for prostitution. I'm not coming back to California if I have a warrant. I go, well, you need to come back and be a victim on the stand for me and for other victims like you. I'm trying to get all my ducks in order here so that when I make the arrest, I have my victim on board. But she just didn't want to come back and go to jail. So we were working out arrangements that where there's a law that you cannot be forced to come back to a state to testify and then be arrested. And I'm like, it's a $10,000 warrant. Dismiss in the interest of justice. It's a prostitution warrant. An overgrown traffic ticket. But we hadn't worked that all out yet. I go, we work out a way to get rid of that warrant and you come back and testify. Will you do it? Finally, she said yes, she will come back to California. This is before we had his DNA confirmed.
Today's DNA technology allows us to get DNA profiles from things that you can't even see. Tiny, minute amounts of blood, skin cells that are being deposited on a surface. These are the sorts of things that we enjoy today.
In the early 90s, around 1992, 1993, this process known as the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, came around. And PCR is this incredible technology that allows us to amplify small parts of the DNA. So we kind of target, we don't look at the entire DNA molecule. We just target small bits of it, amplify those until we have enough to then type them. Suddenly, we could start looking at types of evidence we could never look at before. Cigarette butts, stamps that people licked, soda straws that people drank from. You know, suddenly we could get access to very small stains and get very powerful information from it.
I get contacted by the sheriff's crime lab and told that the DNA from the cigarette matches Jane's sexual assault kit and also the sexual assault kit taken in Washington. It didn't come back to Lee Chandler, but because we eyewitnessed him throwing it out, we're saying that's Lee Chandler. However, I would not go to trial just on that. All right, I would want what I'd call a fresh sample, a clean sample. Right now, we got enough to say that's the guy that raped her. All right, so I get an arrest warrant for attempt murder, kidnapping, rape, sodomy. Also get a new warrant for his DNA.
It was an exciting point because we had put so much time into this. The next phase of the operation goes into play. We've got the search warrant and an arrest warrant. And the plan was to arrest him early in the morning at his home. We don't want this to turn into a pursuit or anything where someone's going to be endangered.
We team up and we go out at 7 o'clock in the morning. All our plane cars and park in front of his house, come in real quick, go up to the door, knock on the door. Lee Chandler comes to the door. I'm wearing a police vest at that time, so it's obvious who I am. He's very shocked and confused. Chandler, you're under arrest for attempt murder, kidnapping, rape, sodomy, and he turns and says, whoa, 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 whoa. We took care of this in Washington. We've already taken care of this. I put the handcuffs on him. That was my biggest satisfaction.
He was a very violent sexual predator, and it was a matter of time before, you know, maybe he brutally attacks another female victim and kills her.
At the station, it's gonna be a big interview because I've done my research on all the interviews he's ever been involved in, all the police reports I could find. He has controlled every interview that I could find him being involved in, controlling everything. And I'm like, this guy is not gonna control me. It's my interview, it's gonna be on my house, and he's not gonna control me. I need a confession. I wanna just finish this thing completely. I want a confession.
Charges against you of rape, assault.
I read him his Miranda rights. He says, I'm gonna invoke my rights, I'm not gonna talk. I said, well, thank you very much. Stood up, opened the door, basically take him down to booking. And I hear, hey, I got some questions. I go, in order to do that, then I'm gonna have to read you your rights again. And he goes, all right, read them again. So I read him his rights again. He said he understood his rights. He said, now, with that, your rights in mind, I'd like to ask you some questions.
Taking over the control in an interview can sometimes be a strategy we find that good liars do when they're being questioned by the police. They try and actively engage them. We find that that distracts them from paying attention to the specifics of the story.
So he says, well, what do you want to ask me? I said, let's just start off, have you ever been arrested before? He says, cut the crap. You know what I've been arrested for. And this kind of, to me, tells me this guy, you know, he knows the game. And he goes, I want to see the charges. I made a mistake there, but I showed him the warrant. I had the date. I could tell right now he recognized the date. And I go, I want to talk to you about a case that happened 5 years ago. A rape and attempt murder of a prostitute. And he says, I'm not talking.
We didn't want this to be another case that he gets away with. We wanted justice for our victim. So we proceeded carefully. We knew that we needed confirmation DNA.
So I said, okay, I have a warrant for your DNA. He says, well, you're not getting that. I'm not going to give it to you. And I said, well, this is what's kind of cool about this warrant. It's a judge ordering me to take your DNA. The only choice you have is whether you want to do a swab in the mouth or a blood test. And he says, I want my lawyer. I go, well, you can't have a lawyer on this part of it. This is a judge's order, and it's going to happen. And he freely gave up his blood because we wanted to make sure that that cigarette on the freeway wasn't just the 1,000,000,001 chance that the guy that raped both these people were driving down the freeway and threw out his cigarette, and we picked up the wrong one. We go for his preliminary hearing. It's the first court day after his arrest. Judge orders $1 million bail. So we're booking him, and I believe it's on a Friday, and he should not see a bail hearing until Monday. So we're on the assumption that he's going to be spending the weekend in jail. Monday morning, I'm going to my usual breakfast spot, and as I'm driving down the road, I get a call from Deputy DA Robert Messman, and he says, Jet Biz killed himself. And I'm like, hold it, I need to pull the car over. Okay, what are you talking about? I go, he's still in jail. He goes, no, Jet Biz is dead. Apparently, on Friday night, he was able to make bail, and he was released on Friday night, and that's why he was out of jail. And over the weekend, he went to his father's grave in Inglewood, California, knelt down beside it, drank some alcohol, and took his father's gun and placed it to his head and killed himself.
For some people, that element of maintaining control and power in one's life will include taking their own life once they feel they're going to be caught. They refuse to submit to the authority of law or the court, and they're going to retain control and kill themselves to be in charge of their own destiny.
I know the victim wants, justice to be served, so it's kind of disappointing, but at the same time, there's a little bit of a sense of relief that, it just confirms what we knew. It confirms that although he might have denied any involvement in these cases, no one commits suicide if you're innocent.
I recontact Jane, and I say, Jane, about your case. The guy's name was Lee Chandler. He's the guy who raped her. There's no question about it. This is the guy. Last night, he killed himself. She actually gulps and kind of starts to cry, and then says, thank you. CODIS is a tool that solved the case for me and gave closure to Jane.
Honestly, without that CODIS hit, we would have never made an arrest on that case, because that was that critical piece of evidence that pointed us in the right direction in regards to a potential suspect.